Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're at, Branching Minds participants. We're so excited that you're here at this MTSS Summit. I am so thrilled to welcome Lakota Public Schools in Ohio to this summit. They have done an excellent job, in my opinion, of just like setting the stage for MTSS, being pioneers and thinking outside of the box, but incredibly inclusive. So I'm very excited to turn it over to Amanda, Wendy, and Todd.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be here. And like she said, we come to you from Lakota Local Schools, which is just about 20 miles north of Cincinnati in Southwest Ohio. Lakota is a pretty large district. We have around 17,000 kids in 23 buildings. And like Rebecca said, we've been working as a district to implement and continue growth with MTSS, which is a process, as you all know. But we are just 3 representatives from that work. There are a lot of people involved in that, and we appreciate the whole big team and everybody's efforts. We focus on a culture of collaboration, right? Whatever position it is and where we are now, that's our focus. So I would imagine that most, if not all of you, strive for a culture of collaboration. For us in Lakota, that's beyond just teachers and teammates getting along with each other well. It's beyond cooperation, just sharing ideas back and forth. Those are good things. But for us, it's really a focus of interdependence. When we know that we're truly relying on each other. So for example, when we planned for this presentation, each time we got together, if one of us had not been there, then the outcome wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have been as strong. And so that interdependence really shows up in our teams when we know that if one person's missing, it won't go as well, and the end result won't be as good. So we rely on each other's conversations, experiences, and everything that we bring to the table, right?
Yes,
For sure.
definitely.
Well, speaking of, in all of our buildings, each one is unique. They each have unique needs. So that's something that we'll talk about some during today's session, because I think it's important to recognize those differences and what we each bring to the table, and that our needs are all different as well. So speaking of that, speaking of collaboration and interdependence, we need you. We want to invite you. We first thought that maybe you'd have audio, but then we learned about a week ago that the chat is our best feature to get to hear from you. So we would love to have you jump in the chat. If we say something that sparks an idea or a question, we'd love to hear from you. And in that way, we can have a little bit of interdependence and collaboration in our session here with all of you. All right, so for our next piece, the culture of collaboration, somebody on our call mentioned they know Matt Miller. He's our superintendent here. And for us, it really starts at the top with Matt. And our other executive team members. They are all for collaboration. They're supportive of it. They're interactive leaders. They really like to have meetings with us and interactions with us, conversations where there's a lot of give and take. There's room for other people to bring ideas to the table. So we want to be intentional about that, just like our district leaders are. And I think about the agendas that they create, things that they create for meetings, and also our principals. Those aren't just sit and get, right, for a long amount of time. We have to have room for collaboration. So if the agenda is packed with so many things that it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure we'll even be able to get to all that I need to share, that's not really the type of meeting we're after. For us, these conversations they allow for collaboration. Providing time for collaboration is really critical. My good friend and colleague who's on this call, Teresa Brock, says we make time for the things that are important to us. I think she's right. So making sure that you provide time intentionally to collaborate. And then another thing we'll talk about later on the call is building a culture that has healthy and productive teams that get along with each other well, work well together, and also produce outcomes that are great for kids and for their team members too. So those are some things that we'll really focus on today. As far as being an administrator, and trying to be a collaborative administrator, who I most like to hear from with that and what that looks like are teachers. But they're the ones who let us know, here's what I'm looking for in a collaborative administrator. So what are some of the things that the two of you look for? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So as I said, I've been in teaching for 27 years. Within those 27 years, I've worked under 4 different principals, several APs, And within that, what has been successful or qualities that I have seen are basically administrators who are approachable, flexible, positive, open-minded, team player, all of those great things. And another key point is just being visible, and not just in the classrooms, not like general ed classrooms, but coming into the intervention classrooms, or you might see them in the hallways or in the cafeteria or carpool duty. It just, allows us to be able to be like, hey, or they check in on you and to see how things are going. And when it talks about creating time and structure for our teamwork, I know at our building specifically, we have every Thursday some type of meeting, whether it be a data meeting where they allow scheduled time for us to collaborate with the different grade levels or within our own team. I'm a party of one, so it's nice for me to be able to go to the different grade levels and meet with them. And also, just being able to, we also have a family meeting, which is what our staff meeting is, but this year we turned it into a family meeting. And I think that speaks volumes coming from the administration, referring to us as family, because we are. I mean, we spend so much time, with each other, and we get to know each other's families, and we are a family. So, just allowing that and putting that into a part of our day makes it really nice. And then as far as building team leaders, this is done within Lakota, all the buildings. We have what is called building leadership teams. And during those, we meet once a month, and basically it's a grade level representative, one person, or like I represent the specialist team and some intervention. And basically, we're the liaison between that grade level and administration. So if there's, we always kind of start out, with something that's going well for your grade level or something that's going well within your group. And then also, is there any concerns or things that you have questions about? So we're kind of, again, transferring that information from our team to administration. And then also any important information is provided to us, and then we can feed it out to our teams as well.
When we talk about being intentional with time for collaboration, I just want to point out, I think all those meetings that you talked about, those teams, those are during the contract day.
Yes.
And I know pretty much every teacher on earth works outside the contract day, but being intentional and saying we are going to make time during that day so we know everybody's here, that's so important.
I have worked under 4 principals, 7 assistant principals, and I've worked with Todd for the last 2 years. He was new to this position last year. And something that I have looked for in those administrators have been for them to be a learner, to come in and ask things, what do you need in order to help you provide interventions? Is there anything that I can do to help? I know Todd came in a lot last year and this year, and he's brought Teresa in with him this year, which has been awesome. And he always started with, what do you need and how can I help you? And that was huge for me, especially in my position. Definitely needed that. Resources. I think we all need resources all the time. We can't get our hands on enough resources. So as an administrator, Todd, my principals, they will give those resources to me, the ones that I need if I need them, no questions. Are you getting what you need from the assessments to plan instruction? That is something that the administration will help me get through if it's something that I'm struggling with or need additional help with. And then to just follow through. If they ask, what can I help you with? What do you need? If I ask for resources or just more time or something else, for them to follow through is huge.
Yeah, I like to ask what you guys need, because when you think about like who's working directly with the kids every day, it's you.
Right.
And I'm going to all these schools, but you're right there working with kids. How are the intervention programs we have working? How is progress monitoring telling you what you need to hear to guide your instruction? Because you know that. You're right there doing it every day.
We have that question from Rick. What do we recommend the level of communication be? Can it be top down or bottom up based on a position? I don't know if we answered that question or not. A lot of times it could be through an email. A lot of times face to face sometimes usually works better. A lot of times, just kind of on the fly, if you can grab whoever you need to talk to. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I think along with your meetings that you are now doing with us, you come in person and chat with us.
Right. What the level of communication, Rick, if I understand the way you're asking that, I think that You could communicate in a lot of different ways and probably should, right? Some things are quick and an email gets it done, but definitely having some in-person element. And then I have to do this. I'm going to sneak peek, like preview a slide we have coming up,
Okay.
where we said our approach in collaborating with teachers and administrators, it's not hands-on and it's not hands-off. It's hands-in together. So I really feel when I come to your classrooms, and I hope you feel this way, that we're a team. We're working to get our level of communication is like, hey, we're a team together. How can we work together to help kids? I think we'll show some other ways to communicate as well when we talk about different meetings that we have in Lakota and just even the overall culture of collaboration as we dig into that even further. But thanks for the question, Rick. Everybody, please keep those coming as they pop up. All right, so it's good as gold to hear what teachers want in an administrator. I'm going to flip the script and talk about the things that as an administrator and my colleagues we look for in teachers. And by the way, as we were making this list, it kind of struck me, these are also things that I look for in the hiring process, right? If we have an opening and we're interviewing a teacher, working through that hiring process, these are good things to look for. So the first is, how do they like to function within a team? Do they want to learn with their teammates? Do they want to analyze data with their teammates? Do they want to plan and problem solve with their teammates? The days of working in a silo as a teacher are gone, right? Four walls, closed door. We have definitely figured out in our strongest schools that we're better together. When we put our heads together with everybody's experience and ideas, we're better together. So do they want to work as a team? Have they done that in the past? And those are 4 areas that I look for in collaborative teachers. Are they willing to take risks? We have to, because otherwise some of the best discoveries we might find that help kids would never have been found, right? If we didn't take that risk. I think about teaching, as it says here on the slide, is more of a practice, kind of like when I go see my doctor and they say, well, we think that this is probably what's happening, and we think you should try this medicine or whatever it is. Teaching is a lot like that. Nobody's going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes along the way, but we have to be willing to take those risks and practice teaching. It's an art form. Being open and vulnerable with student data is so critical. If teachers are afraid of data or really don't like to show that to others, they want to hide their data, whether it's good or bad data in their good or bad, right? Whichever it is, right? It's all it is an indicator. Like you said, just data. It's where our kids are right now. It helps us see what they need. It's not a judgment on any teacher.
Learning tool for anything, you know,
It sure is.
where their strengths, where their weaknesses, and share it on the child.
Yeah, and direction to go with those children, so.
Right. And speaking of learning tools, you said this for administrators, I'm going to say for teachers, be a learner. Are they teachers who want to constantly find new resources and ideas and bring those back to their team? I'll get back to that teamwork again. Are they looking for the latest and greatest ideas? Are they thinking about how they could tweak something that they're already using? It's really about wanting to just get better every day, each year. Our students, we have a lot of diversity within our student body, 17,000 kids. You're going to have that, right? So for us, considering and advocating the needs of each student, because they all need different things, just like we do as adults. So that's an important piece of being collaborative. Will they help build the culture that you want within your teams? You know, which applies to a lot of those things above on the list. It's really about, are they going to bring that collaborative approach and build that culture with the team? Like, this is what we believe in, this is how we function, this is how we work together. And then, of course, following through. You mentioned it for administrators. When we come together, we have a meeting as a group of teachers, whether I'm there or not, and the team decides we're going to do this for kids, or we're going to give this assessment and come back with these data points for our next discussion. Following through so that we can continue to move forward and all of that.
We do have a question from Catherine.
Oh, great. Sometimes the resources that are being requested may not be evidence-based or not approved by the district. And resources they may be comfortable with through experience. How would you handle those requests? That's a great question. I would, first of all, I'm open to the conversation about what that resource is. I would love to have the opportunity to watch that resource being used in action.
Mhm.
I know with the two of you, if you said, hey, I'm trying this new resource I found, and I said, can I go see it sometime?
Come on in.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So I would like to see it firsthand as well. It could be closely tied to some things that are research-based.
Mhm.
It also matters
I
the
think
degree
having
you're-
conversations though too, like why is that teacher using that specific resource?
Mm.
Right.
Go
But
on.
again, like what is it, does it tie to something that is a little more evidence-based?
Right.
Because there might be some, similarities, it just depends.
And is she using it just to supplement for a little bit of a lesson?
Right.
Right? When
Right.
it ties to the resource she's using, maybe
Or
it's just
he.
a little bit. Of course. So I also think about just that resource in general.
Mhm.
Is it producing good results?
Right. And I think that communication piece is a huge part of it, is finding the why behind that.
Right.
Right.
The last thing I'll throw into this, Catherine, I know we're giving you a lot of questions, but I feel like that's the biggest part of my job is asking questions to understand more and more. I wonder, is there something that's missing in the list, let's say list or menu of research-based programs that you're offering teachers? Is there something missing that made this teacher say, I need to go out and find something that fills this void? Because that might be something for you and your team to look at, to consider adding to what you already have. All right, so that is being a collaborative teacher. Now within our schools, we have intervention teams. You're both parts of those.
Yes.
Your team has more people than yours
Yeah.
due to student needs, but
Yes.
but in any case, what do you look for in just that general overall collaborative environment with your team?
Again, I think it's just, it's more than just a meeting. It's that constant communication. Breaking any walls down and just being able to, have those conversations, whether they be challenging or not, just communicating. And you already stole my little.
I'm
here.
sorry.
I know, it's all
I know.
good. But again, it's not that hands-on, hands off. It's just, again, hands in together. And I think that's something that we truly live by. One of the bullet points I had put up there specifically is, so in Ohio, we have a third grade reading guarantee for passage. And along with that comes a reading improvement and monitoring plan. So myself and the principal, so we have students that are close to not, showing that passing score. We will personally make a phone call. We've done that in the past. And having some of those tough conversations with parents and explaining, what are the options and what are we doing on our end. So again, just kind of working together. So it's not, myself making the phone call or, she doesn't work with the student. So what's the point of her making the phone call? So it's just kind of that collaboration of both of us being on that meeting with the parents as well.
And not everybody on this call probably has RIMS, but I think most states have, and Rebecca told me this, some kind of third grade reading walls of some sort.
Yeah.
I think about the message that sends to parents too. When they get that call from both of you together, it's like, look at this team that is there to support my child.
Yes. And then new students as well, like when we get new students, looking at data as soon as they come in, or if we don't have data, again, we'll make the phone call to the parents again. Tell us a little bit about your student. Can you tell us about your child? Do they receive services? Just again, it's that communication, it's that collaboration with administration and myself. And so I'm in a building 3 through 6, and I am the only reading specialist there. So I am the middleman. Which kind of pseudo admin, I guess. I don't know. But again, and then transitioning with the students, a lot of it is just us working together.
And my team is huge. I am the only reading specialist. I'm full-time, but we also have 2 Title I teachers full-time, as well as 2 ESL teachers full-time. We have a speech lady. We also have a counselor and our intervention specialist that I communicate with, and the whole team communicates with each other. It's not always a sit-down formal meeting. It is going through the hallway. Hey, I'm working with so-and-so. Can you give me some feedback on what you're working on so that I can help them better in my groups? But I room with 2 of the title teachers, and our ESL teachers are right across the hall. So we are in constant communication all of the time. And we share students. Our title teachers focus on math, and the ESL teachers focus on the reading. So they're communicating about how they're doing in those subject areas as well. So I have a lot of support, unlike Wendy, in my building, but our needs are great. So before an actual meeting, team lead, that's usually me. I will head up those meetings. I meet with my building assistant principal and the principal to kind of look at what the expectations are for interventions. And then to align the building decision-making expectations with those and collaborate on the meeting agenda. So we will get what we need prepared in that meeting agenda. I'm also, like I said, in connection between the specialists and classroom teachers. So I know I just sent out an email today to some 6th grade teachers for kids preparing for our next set of groups, and to look at interventions that I need to provide and checking in to see what they're providing in the classroom. So it is constant communication in our building.
I am loving that we have an audience here. People
I know,
who are
I
joining us
love
that are
these
asking questions,
questions.
maybe comments.
I love it.
We had no idea, right? You
Yeah.
wouldn't either, what that would look like. So Rick wrote again and said he's talking about that middleman approach. And Rick, I think I understand the picture you're painting here. You know, we're here today not because we want to share so much of what we do. That's a lot of what we are sharing, but hopefully the message you heard from the jump was why we do it, right? How much we believe in collaboration and that culture of collaboration. That's what we try to start with. How much we believe that we truly are better together and when we work well together. And that's where I think I would go somewhat, Rick, if I were in the situation you're describing, is whether I'm working with teachers or administrators, what are we about? We're about helping kids. We're about helping kids grow. We're looking at the whole child. We're looking at evidence of growth and celebrating that. We're making sure we have the resources we need to support that growth. So wherever I am, whether I'm on this side or that, in the middle, that's really the focus when we get together and talk as well. We had a question that was interesting. Where do you document what you discuss in those hallway conversations?
And again, it's very informal. Sometimes what we discuss ends up on an agenda, preparing a kid for an SST meeting or an IEP meeting, but it's very informal. We are called the Freedom Family. Freedom is the building that I work in, and we are a family, like you said. It is a family approach. We are all comfortable talking with each other respectfully. If we're struggling with something, we will always ask for help. That's just the culture of our building. And it is fantastic. We have people that have been in the building since it opened and never want to leave. I mean, it's just such a great atmosphere to be in. So it is a lot of informal. If I need to document, I keep a Google slide and keep that information in there, as well as branching minds. We've started that this year.
That's the correct answer. That's the correct answer.
That's where I'm going with that, because that's how I used to do that. And so because branching minds is still fairly new for us. And so I have learned to put a lot of that in there. And there's little areas in there where you can put notes about the kids in there. So that we're starting to use and get more comfortable with that.
Yeah, under meetings or family communication.
Definitely.
Right, you can also upload the documents as well, so it's nice when parents share information or testing results. We are able to upload that so that we can just refer classroom teachers or other intervention teachers for speech or so forth. Hey, it's in Branching Minds, go ahead and check it out. So it's great that all that information is right there.
Morgan's question is interesting. When you have an intervention team that wants administrators to make the decisions, so that if things go south, I would assume with the data, the teachers don't have to feel like they've failed. How do you cultivate conversations that allow for that hands-in together approach? Well, it certainly is a cultural piece, right? It definitely is. And I think as an administrator, if I were working with a team like that, first of all, building the culture and emphasizing that we are better together is one piece. I think I would lob up some softballs, honestly.
I was going to say something fun. You have to get loose, be a little
Yeah.
social,
Right.
have fun with each other.
Yeah.
Because again, our jobs are stressful enough as it is. So you have to learn to build in some of that fun time in that community building within your own building.
Yeah, and maybe even some of it can very much relate to what's happening in classrooms, like celebrating successes. So have them identify one student each who's been very successful with growth, and then talk about what they've done that's led to that. It's just bringing their voice to the table and helping them see how important that is. Maybe it's some kind of a resource that you know they have opinions on, and you can put it up on chart paper and ask them to share with you the pros and cons of that resource. And if it's something they have a lot of thoughts about, again, they're going to have information for those sticky notes or for that.
I think a lot of it is just allowing for those conversations, like, and just being able to feel comfortable sharing. And it's positive and negative, and allowing that to happen. It's okay, right? But, have the evidence there as well.
Yeah, and be comfortable asking the questions and not being the person who has the answers. Put it back as a question.
Another question or a statement.
I get to see this one.
I
You
know.
want to cover this one?
Says, we are a school-wide intervention school. However, our teachers have had students who test low on the F&P, which is conscious and adult reading levels, pulled out for one-on-one intervention forever. The data clearly shows this is not working as the students get pulled from K through 7 with very few that exit the program. I've been instructed by the superintendent to help the transition to school-wide, and I'm stuck with unhappy teachers and interventionists. I'm so sorry to hear that.
One thing that stands out to me about that is the one-on-one piece. There might be some kids who really benefit from one-on-one, but overall, they're missing out on a lot of opportunities to learn from each other and collaborate. I was in a classroom yesterday where a teacher was having kids write "get on the jet," right? And I watched one little girl help a little boy next to her with the vowel sound in the middle of jet.
Yeah.
And so those kinds of things do happen. Do you see that in your group?
Well, and what's nice is it allows those who come to intervention who might struggle in the gen ed classroom be successful and be like, oh my goodness, I helped my peer, and how wonderful that is for them. So it's building their confidence as well. So yeah, those small groups are amazing, just to help build them. And a lot of times it's at their level, so they're confident within themselves, and they can go back and apply that what's at their level, and then try and apply it into the classroom. So
good point. Yep. The last thing that I'll say on this is, if the data is showing that it's not working, the data clearly shows this is not working. That's Tracy. And it's time to have that team problem-solving conversation, because we all want to show kids in the growth. All right, so you talked about general overall culture within an intervention team and other players in the building and that. How about when we actually get to that meeting setting with the intervention team? What does that look like?
All right, so who will facilitate? Usually during these data meetings, I'm the facilitator as the reading specialist. So that ownership of the meeting belongs to me. Admin does attend. We have our assistant principal and our principal, sometimes depending on if we have to deal with an issue or something, one will be here but not the other. I know Todd has attended some of our meetings as well, so that's been great. But to be there and to participate. They kind of help us come up with solutions if we have some problems that we're kind of struggling with. They also support the decisions that we make in the meeting. We'll come up with some ideas and we'll say, so-and-so needs this support. What can we do about that? Or this is what we plan to do about that. And our admin will be like, okay, let's try it. So that definitely helps us. So after the meeting, we're going to talk about the classroom teacher. Sometimes we had a classroom teacher who disagrees with a student not qualifying for intervention support. I think Wendy's going to talk a little bit about that. Example.
Well, yeah, no, it's just nice for them to be able to set the foundation, especially with having one reading specialist. So our goal is to provide services for students in that 25th percentile and below. And so, most recently I had a student that was in the 38th percentile, and it was, as much as I would love to keep the child, I mean, she was a wonderful, sweet, hard worker. But again, I think sometimes classroom teachers are like, oh, you take them, you fix them. And like, oh, but our data shows that we're better with the higher kids, and someone like Wendy who's so good with those lower students and can really, really grow them. But it was really nice to just have the the support from administration and says, look, this is what we're really focusing in. She's a reading specialist for that 25th percentile, and what's nice is that I can provide, give them some resources. And, hey, this is what I've tried with them. Perhaps you want to try this in your classroom. So allowing and giving some examples for that. So
kudos to you. To me, that's a game changer, is that you don't just say, well, I'm not going to serve this student in small group.
Right.
They didn't qualify. You also say, here are some things I'm thinking they can use. Can we talk about resources? Can I provide you with some things that you can use to help them?
Right. Right, and a lot of times, and if they're not familiar, I'm more than happy, to show you or model it or, kind of do those types of scenarios with them as well.
Yeah, that came up this year with a teacher who's new to teaching language arts, and she wanted to try a new resource, and I am very good at using this resource, so I was able to go into her classroom and to model that for the kids for a week and show them the activities that go along with the resource and to help the teacher, so she would have had a chance to see what that looked like and how it would go to her classroom.
I think also with these meetings, a lot of times we are the ones, and especially because our buildings are 3 through 6, if we're talking with 4th, 5th, and 6th, we've had these students for more than a year, or some of them. So we feel like we know these students, we know their learning styles, we know their data, things that have worked well, things that we've done. So it's kind of nice to know that as well. Where the administration, they know them as a person, in the hallways, but not necessarily as a learner and what works for them. So it's nice to kind of get that information.
Mm-hmm. Great tips. Can we zoom out?
Yeah.
So we went all the way down into an intervention meeting. Now I want to zoom out to district collaboration and meetings that involve district personnel. So I am part of a team of 4. Dina Moss, I think, is on this call. She's our director of MTSS in Lakota. Teresa Brock, I've mentioned, and then Mark Bird is our secondary MTSS supervisor. Our team also works closely with the curriculum department and student services to do a lot of collaboration for our district to serve all 23 of our buildings. A lot of what we're doing is supporting consistency of protocols. How do we go about assessing students? What's the flow chart look like that? The sequence of assessments from your universal screeners down to your diagnostics that might be channeled to based on what you're seeing from students. That assesses their strengths and challenges. We also support teachers and administrators on how do we analyze those assessments. It could look like a one-on-one conversation, joining a team meeting. It could be that we're preparing a data spreadsheet in a way that's really user-friendly so the teacher or administrator can just jump right in and be able to start sorting and seeing what they need to see quickly. Sometimes it's a guidance document. It's questions you could consider, like a menu, maybe some possible next steps that you might want to take as a team after that for some guidance. Definitely we are a part of the decision-making on the intervention selection process, but I feel like, again, more of our department's role for that is to say, here are some resources we've vetted as a district. We've heard from teachers who piloted them or used them, and here are resources we support. And it's the teachers who work directly with the kids, who actually did the assessments and are going to deliver the instruction. You're the ones who say, based on the student's needs, I'm going to use this intervention tool. I'm going to progress monitor with this. Right? So that's a lot of our team's role. Throughout all that, you can probably already imagine that conversations with teachers are so critical. As a district team, we want to find opportunities to bring teachers together and let them collaborate. We want to be, again, intentional about that. So we talked about regular check-ins, coming to your school, seeing how things are going. Can we move closer to the mic? I don't know. I can talk louder. Maybe, does that help?
Something needs to turn up. All right, there we go.
Great. Catherine said yes. I'll just talk a little louder.
Okay.
All right. So those regular check-ins we talked about, asking questions, especially if there's a resource that you're using for us or it's newer, you're using with kids. I love to ask, how's that working? Is that progress monitoring tool giving you the information you need to guide instruction? We also have scheduled intervention team support. So times when we'll come in and Teresa and I will sit down with your team of teachers and support you guys specifically. This is exciting. So Kim Melzer is our director of federal programs for Lakota, and she had an idea that she brought some of us into and said, what if we did a monthly virtual PD for intervention teachers? So we launched that this year, and one of my favorite parts of that is that teachers had a say in the agendas for those
topics. Yeah.
All right. So we sent out a survey and said, what programs are you using the most, second most, third most, and how comfortable are you with that program? So it was anything from, I really would like more training on this program, all the way up to, I feel very comfortable I could help someone else with that program. And you guys know where we went with that, of course, right? And all administrators on this call can see this coming. So then we reached out, and if you said, I feel so comfortable I can help others, we asked, would you be willing to facilitate part of our upcoming meeting 1 month when we dive into that resource? And overwhelmingly, teachers have said yes to that. And great.
But what's nice with that is for those on the other side who aren't familiar with that or haven't used that, it's like, oh my goodness, here is someone who I see who's actually using it and is being successful with it. So you're like, okay, take it from the horse's mouth,
Right.
so to speak.
Well, and I feel like I have good relationships with our teachers in general, but there is some kind of street cred to a teacher who's using it day in and day out, being the one who's sharing with you.
Yes.
There just is. Transition meetings are something that we had one last spring. In our district, kids changed buildings when they moved from a K-2 school to a 3-6 school. So from 2nd to 3rd grade, pretty critical time. They're part of that, they're transitioning buildings. And so we had a transition meeting where teachers could discuss students as kids. And what I heard in conversation floating around was a lot more than just a spreadsheet with the data. Here's the assessment data. It was, who are they? What background info do I need to know as their new teacher that's going to help me create a positive relationship from the start with this child, maybe with their family? You guys talked about kids who are struggling with interventions, kids who've been thriving. Was the instruction delivered with fidelity and the integrity that we hope it would be? Sometimes that's no one's fault. It's just that a child was absent for so many days that the data can't really tell us the whole story. And then learning what interventions are most effective with specific students and just talking about strategies that you can use moving forward. Do you want to talk about how you enjoyed those intervention meetings or transitions?
Oh, I definitely will talk about that. I was there in the spring, and I know there was a group of kiddos that, because of the 3rd grade guarantee, I wanted to make sure that I started those interventions immediately. So the information that I got on several of the kids, I have them in a group and I am seeing them, and I was able just to continue on with the interventions that have been started in 2nd grade. So it's been flowing pretty smoothly and the kids are growing. So it was invaluable to me to be able to meet with those K-2 teachers, the reading specialists and the title teachers, and get that information ahead of time so that I knew when I came in the fall that I would be ready for those groups.
Well, and it's nice because we have such a large district, you can put a name with a face and you can always reach out then. You're like, oh, I remember talking, that name sounds familiar. And then once you get to know them, you're like, I'm going to email her or, just kind of follow up again. But again, it's nice. It's knowing, what was used in the past, what worked well with them. Again, knowing that child as a whole, family situations, what's going on in their life that, and what's nice too is even in those transition meetings, you look at some of the numbers and then by the time they come to 3rd grade, you're like, oh, okay, they're doing all right, which is great to see as well. It is. You're like, oh, shoot, yay.
You just alluded to this. The reason we have the fire emoji on there is because one of the things that you can't necessarily pick up on paper at these transition meetings are the connections that are created throughout the room. Like you said, we're in a big district, but all these, I see it like sparks all over the place, contact information being exchanged between teachers because they only knew each other from a name or through email or maybe not at all.
Right.
And now because of that moment in the transition meeting, they're going to connect again in the fall. They're going to call each other or text, and that helps them help kids. So I love seeing those connections that are made.
There was a question about, and I can't see it now because it was up on the screen, about the one I mentioned about going into the classroom and modeling, and if there's no time.
Someone said they didn't have time to
Right.
do it in the classroom.
And again, to me, if it benefits the kids, it's valuable, and the teacher's going to have to make that time because it is valuable and it's what those kids need. If not all of them need it, then I would go in, hold a small group and model it for that small group and that teacher only. But the whole class, this was something that a whole class needed, and I went ahead and modeled it. And the teacher made the time because she found it to be valuable. Also, another question we have is what progress monitoring tool or resources do we use? We definitely do MAP, 3 times a year. We use that data to help form our groups and drive our instruction for interventions, not only in our small intervention groups, but our classroom teachers use that information, the breakdowns of the skills, and plan for their groups during our personalized learning time. We have that time built into our day for the rest of the kids who don't necessarily get pulled for small group intervention. The teachers in our buildings do small group instruction for reading as well and as math. We also use AimsWeb for oral reading fluency. And
Math fluency
Math
for
fluency,
K3.
third grade.
Right now, we use that up to 3rd grade.
yeah, so I'm just using the 3rd graders right now.
Right. We even have some teacher-based tools that can alternate weeks with that research-based progress monitoring tool to help drive instruction there as well. That some teachers use. Teresa and a team of teachers made a lot of those last year. But I'll say overall, Rosalind, the biggest point of emphasis we have on what progress monitoring tool do we use, we try to make sure it aligns to the specific targeted skill within the intervention, whatever it is. So if we're really targeting phonological awareness, then we're not going to progress monitor oral reading fluency. Right? So we're going to use Haggerty or some other tool to pass, something to progress monitor students in that area that we see. We have more questions rolling in.
Ooh, this one's high school, I don't know.
Well, we do use math. So, well, not at the high school level. We do for junior high. So right now, our high school team is working more and more on what universal screeners will we use, what do we have, and that's something that I feel like when we started MTSS, our department last year at K6, we were kind of jumping into a stream that was already moving along. For our high school level, it was earlier than that in the beginning, right? They were jumping in and trying to get things rolling more so as far as MTSS goes. There's a lot of great teaching already happening, but not as much emphasis on MTSS. So Rachel, it wasn't Rachel, sorry, Jamie. Jamie, if you don't mind reaching out to us, our contact information will be on a later slide, and we'd love to connect you with our high school folks because they can speak to that more directly than we can. You have some math intervention happening in your school. We have a number sense screener that we use and some follow-up activities related to that number sense screener that we use for math intervention. It's not as common to have math intervention in our elementaries. I feel like most of our schools put most or all of their intervention resources from a specialist into reading.
Our title provides on that intervention.
All right. So we're going to change gears and talk about Branching Minds, which is the organization that allows us to be here too.
Yes. So again, like our building and our district is Branching Minds is fairly new to us, and I have been working with Branching Minds all year, getting groups started and the interventions that I'm doing, the progress monitoring tools that I'm using, and the groups are created and monitored by myself. If a classroom teacher is using an intervention in their classroom, which this year they are starting to do a little bit more interventions, so they're adding those in so to make sure they have those. And the administrators are also using those. We have behavior reports, meetings that they've had, so they're putting all of that into the Branching Minds platform so that we all can see that information for a certain kid. The general education teachers have access to see what their students are doing in my group, in the titles group, in ESL, and kind of progress those kids. So if they look in there and they see that I'm doing a fluency group, and I'm using 6-minute solutions for that, then they would kind of give me feedback on whether or not they're applying that into their classrooms, or if they need a little bit more, a little bit less, and we kind of keep in touch that way.
It's nice for them to be able to see,
Yes.
without having those, conversations in the hall. They can just pull it up and be like, oh my goodness, I noticed that, they had a dip here, and then maybe having those conversations, oh, I remember that's when something happened at home, or, it's just nice for them to be able to follow their student as well, even though they're not in their classroom, they're with us.
Right. And then the student support team, the SST, the problem-solving meetings for individual students who are struggling. Perfect example just happened recently, and it's been happening more and more. There is a student that I see have been providing interventions for the last 2 years. And when we sat down with our assistant principal, the classroom teacher, our school psych, the speech pathologist, we pulled up this kid's data in Branching Minds, and it just blew us away to see the data all lined out. Scores for MAP, his Ames Web scores, whether he has been here, is he attendance problem. It also incorporates the social emotional learning, the data from that to see if there's some struggles there. So we kind of see with this platform the whole kid, and to see why he's struggling, and the strengths as well. So that was huge for us to see.
So important, because all those things factor in. And it's historical too. You can look back and see MAP scores over time.
Yes. Well, what's nice with us, with having second grade not in our building, it's nice to have through Branching Minds. It's all right there.
Yeah.
You can't go down the hall and ask that.
Right, no. So it's nice just to
Right.
pull it up and be like, oh, that's what happened in second grade.
Right.
The other thing, the transition meetings, I think we've covered that in great lengths. Same thing with sharing the documentation, communication. Again, putting that information in Branching Minds, whether it be, an email, testing information, things like that. It's just wonderful to have it all right in Branching Minds.
And then we document conversations with parents.
Absolutely.
Right? I think we
Been
talked
great
about
for
that
that, yeah.
as well. One thing that we did as a district that I think was important here, when we first started talking about Branching Minds and just getting our feet wet, dipping the toe in the water, we asked some schools and teachers and administrators intentionally if they wanted to be a part of our pioneer team. We didn't call it a pilot, because sometimes a pilot can mean we might not do this. We knew we were headed in the direction of Branching Minds, so we said, let's call it pioneers. When you think about those early adopters and those people who, when a new thing comes along, they're ready to jump on board, almost no questions asked, they're excited, let's do it. And then we have that broad range of people who kind of want to check it out first and probably will get on board, but they want to see it. And then, of course, those who are going to be we're going to have a hard time getting them on board no matter what. You always have some of those. So I think that we got out in front of things a little bit. When those early adopters said, yes, I'll try it, we were able to work out a lot of the questions that were Lakota-based that we would have. Like, how will we use this in Lakota? Will we use this feature? Will we use it right away? Will we maybe use it in a year or two? And by answering a lot of those Lakota-based questions, I think when the next wave of people were introduced to Branching Minds, we had gotten that out of the way. We increased their chance of getting on board. Right? All right, so let's dive into another type of meeting, because we do have meetings.
Yes, we do. And these are our universal MTSS meetings that we typically have in the fall, winter, and spring. So usually in all of these times, the children will take the MAP test all 3 times, and we will use that data as well as any other data that we have collected and meet with teams of classroom teachers. The administration is there, specialists like the intervention specialists, our speech, school psych, counselor, again, because the whole kid involves all of those pieces. They're there to discuss the strengths and needs of the students that we're going to be grouping. Typically, the way that this works is we have a half a day per grade level. So subs are usually provided for classroom teachers. They'll have a half day to come into the meeting, meet with us. Title, ESL, reading specialists are all a part of this. And we will take a look at the data and discuss the kids with the greatest needs, but then also talk about the kids who have life skill needs and how those teachers can group them for their personalized learning groups. Do you want to add anything else to that?
I love that. I think it's not at all just like, well, I can pull these kids as a specialist and group with me. It's you're there as a support to them for what they can do in the gen ed setting.
Exactly.
Like you said, to meet those needs. And then the next piece, I do want to jump in on this because I get excited about universal meetings, and here's why. Classroom visits are awesome, right? We get to, I know we all do classroom visits. We get to see what's happening in the class, and it's so much fun to get down with the kids and see what's happening, what they're learning about, what they're thinking about. And then the evaluation meetings we have, well, that's where you get to see some of the behind the scenes work that a teacher did. You don't see that so much in a classroom visit. It's more that conversation one-on-one. And talk to me about what you're seeing, what evidence of needs you're seeing from your kids, and how you're supporting those needs where they are. What we miss in both those settings is the team collaboration. And that's not there in either one of those settings. So the universal meetings provide a completely different lens for me as an administrator to support the team, to help them be a healthy and productive team, to see how they function together and how I can support them within that.
And if you had anything to add for you
No, I
as well, no, okay, good. But like I said, students, substitute teachers are brought in. That's ideal. With COVID, it's not been happening that way, so it's not been done as well, unfortunately, but it's getting better this year now that we're post-COVID. But PBIS recognition activities, so that positive behavior system, I know I'm a part of that in my building as well. And we're working on things to focus on the positive behaviors, especially those kids who struggle with that, combining classes. We have additional specials in exchange for a day with no specials, scheduled meetings before after student hours, and administration has covered a class before so that we could meet and get and discuss those kids and those things that we do.
They get creative, right?
They do.
They have to,
They
if
do,
you're gonna
yeah.
make it happen.
Yeah.
Oh, Barbara asked when the meetings take place. So these meetings are seasonal.
Yes.
We typically have them fall, winter, spring.
So usually it's October, again in January, and then again in
May.
April or May, and probably more so May after testing.
When we plan for these universal meetings, I think just like a teacher looks at students in their class and says, well, they have different strengths and needs, they need different support from me. I think it's the same view for an administrator when you're looking at how you're going to support a team. So you might have a team that has a lot of veteran teachers or one that has a super strong leader. You might have one that needs to develop more interdependence. There could be one team member who's carrying the workload for the team. And how your approach of support could be, how can I help them see that this workload should go around and everybody can grow from that interdependence. Some teams might need a stronger focus. Some have lots of resources for kids who are struggling, but they don't have many resources from the side of kids who are identified as gifted. So they're looking for help with that. It's really not a one size fits all. It just depends on what the team needs, and you're looking at that as an administrator to set that up for them. Building capacity in our BLT, you mentioned our BLTs earlier. This is so critical. Checking in with those team leaders, making sure that we're in constant communication with them is so important because that flows out into the building. So I think about are our BLT meetings looking like what we would like to see in team meetings? Are we modeling that? Sometimes you might find a BLT meeting that's a lot of nuts and bolts. Here are the scheduling pieces you need to know. And often when that type of meeting happens, what you see next is the teacher who was at the table turns around and goes to his or her team and relays that information.
Right.
It looks the same as it did, right? So we try to get away from that and be more about being lead learners and being all about instruction and growth with our kids. It's a great chance to emphasize the data that you as a building team feel like should be emphasized. What's our focus here? What are we putting our stock in? What do we really want to see from our kids? How are we measuring whether it's working or not? And can we problem solve together if it's not? You might be looking more big picture at times than a grade level team, but it's still that same type of view. Building that capacity to then turn around and facilitate that meeting in their own team meeting. One of my favorite reflective exercises for this is to sit back after a BLT meeting and just imagine each of the team members around the table. What was at least one critical thing significant thing that they provided and added to the conversation? And if I can go around and think of at least one thing for each team member, we are probably set up to be collaborative. We probably are. If I can't, that might be a key to me. I need to try to help bring that voice out some or encourage people to talk, or maybe one person's dominating the meeting. What can I do to support more collective growth for us? Because that collective teacher advocacy, right? I mean, Hattie's research says of the things we have control over, that's near the top of things that we can do is build that collective teacher advocacy. BLT is a chance to do that. The last note on here is about preparing for meetings and communicating about them. I think even more than what happens in the actual meeting, sometimes even more important than that is how you prep for it, right? Did you put the time into it? Were you clear as an administrator about the objectives, the agenda for the meeting? Sometimes it's a matter of, did you get that information out early enough that teachers could prepare what they needed? You know, if I contact you guys and say, we're gonna have a meeting, it's in 30 minutes, and by the way, I need you to bring all these data pieces.
Yeah.
You can, not only is that not fun, but you can increase anxiety of teachers by doing that, especially if they're new to working with you as an administrator. So thinking about, when do I need to communicate this to give them time, and how can I make it clear what kind of environment we're setting up here and what our goals are?
Well, and what's nice with that agenda too, like being a VLT person, the agenda comes out, so then I can turn to my team and say, hey, these are some things that is on the agenda. Is there any questions that you think that you might have that I can take to the admin or to the meeting, and hopefully get those answered? So it's not just, the administration saying, here's the agenda, and just running right through it without any, conversation or interaction. It's like, okay, here's the agenda. I want you to kind of marinate on it or look at it. Maybe ask your team if there's any concerns, and then it just makes it go so much smoother too.
That's awesome. You got that agenda in time
Right.
to get to your team,
Yes,
right? Before
yes,
that's wonderful. All right, one of the most specific and individualized things we do to support a child are our SS teams, our student support teams. So what does it look like for the two of you for those environments to be collaborative?
Again, I think what we have talked this whole time is communicate. That's huge. That's the biggest piece of it. And I feel like a lot of times in our position as the reading specialist, we are the team lead with that connection between teachers and administration. Oftentimes, teachers constantly come to us talking about students, and then administration will come to us and say, "Hey, what do you know about this student?" Just to kind of go, being that in between person. And a lot of times, administration will come to that. Well, did you talk to the reading specialist first, or did you speak with the counselor? And I think that's a great tool for them as well. Is you're coming to me with information about a student, but did you go to the director out first? Did you talk to that reading specialist? Did you speak to the counselor? So I think that's something that's really important. Is just collaborating again with the important people that are touching that child or touching the lives of that child and knowing all that first.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of go back to some of the questions about the special education, people being involved in the meetings. Our intervention specialists, what we call them, special ed, are there as a resource. If we have kids who are struggling with an area of reading, they work with some pretty tough kids, and they might have suggestions for those teachers who find that one area of reading that a kid is struggling with, how to help them. So they're there as a resource. Our psych is the last person we go to. We don't test every kid that a teacher comes to them with.
Right.
Usually we have data long before that with their MAP scores, Terra Nova, and U's from second grade, because we get them as third graders. So we utilize that data.
Progress monitoring data.
Sure. Definitely. All these things that Branching Minds has made it a lot easier to do. Also, as far as the general educators collecting data and administering research-based interventions, that is something that we talk about all the time in our building. And our AP says every time, I need 6 weeks of a good intervention and done with validity. So to see, is the kid growing? Did it work? Or did it not work? Then we really need to look at them more deeply. And then we'll bring in our school site for that if needed. But yeah, we have to collect a lot of data. The classroom teachers do as well. I have data to help them with that process if they are one of the kids that I see and provide services for. But yeah, I just wanted to cover that before we moved on.
Because SSTs for us are not a direct path to evaluation for special education.
No, I think someone else mentioned that in the chat.
Again, it could be something that the counselor can help out with. It could be a social emotional need, and they're just not doing well for some reason. Something happened at home or something that they need a little help with at school. So
It's a problem solving.
it is. It's a
Right.
problem solving team. That's a great way to put it. And that's what we do. We kind of look at what's going on. What have you tried? Let's try this. And then go from there. And keep it simple. Don't try to do all of these different things at one time. Pick one of the most easiest things that you need to do and start with that.
We're going to leave you with this wonderful quote. It's the most valuable resource that all teachers have is each other. Without collaboration, our growth is limited to our own perspectives. And that is by Robert John Meehan. And when we look at teachers, that includes all. That's administration, everyone. So administration, you are teachers as well. So embrace that and thank you so much for joining us.